Around 1500 BCE, the prosperous Minoan civilization was conquered by a people known as the Mycenaeans from the Greek mainland. Though the Mycenaeans borrowed many things from the Minoan predecessors, like their government, their writing system, and even, to some extent, their art, the Mycenaeans were also very different from the Minoans. Though Mycenaean art derived its themes from Minoan art, they never reached the technical mastery and artistic delicacy of the Minoans. Though the Mycenaeans used the same letters as the Minoans' Linear A script, they adapted it to write an early form of Greek, forming their own unique Linear B script. Though the Mycenaeans seem to have practiced a central palace bureaucracy, similar to that of the Minoans, the Mycenaeans also seem to have grasped the importance of military power in government, a concept that seems to have eluded the Minoans entirely. The Mycenaeans were warriors, first and foremost. Within a century, the Mycenaeans had conquered the majority of the former Minoan Empire. By 1400 BCE, Mycenae controlled the entire Aegean Sea, and around 1250 they famously sacked the city of Troy in Asia Minor. Being conquerors themselves, the Mycenaeans were keenly aware of the threat of military conquest. Unlike the unfortified Minoan palaces, the palace at Mycenae had huge walls for protection. The stones for these walls were so massive that later Greeks assumed that these walls must have been built by the mythical Cyclopses, giving this huge stone style of building its name, Cyclopean. Yet neither Mycenae's martial valor nor those Cyclopean walls were able to protect Mycenae from the Dorian invasion that began between 1200 and 1100 BCE. The expensive bronze weapons of the Mycenaeans could not hold up to the cheap but powerful iron weapons of the Dorians, and within a few decades the Mycenaean civilization was all but wiped from the earth. Though the Dorians had superior military technology, they lagged far behind the Mycenaeans in terms of culture and civilization. With the rise of the Dorians, Greece entered a dark age. Cities were abandoned, trade ground to a halt, and literacy all but disappeared. Greece would remain in this dark age for nearly 400 years. The Dorian invasion was but one part of a worldwide Bronze Age collapse. Between 1200 and 1150, similar collapses were taking place in Asia Minor, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. The Hittite Empire vanished without a trace. The mighty Egyptians were conquered by a mysterious group known only as the Sea Peoples. Not one city was left standing from Greece to the Levant. Trade and literacy all but vanished from the West. Since the Dorians left us with no written records, and very few material goods, we know almost nothing about Greece in the Dark Ages. Most of our knowledge is rather inferred from the Iliad and the Odyssey, which were composed in this age, and some scant archaeological findings. From these, we believe that the Greeks of the Dark Ages lived in autonomous village communities, ruled over by a king, who was little more than a warlord. Any assemblies were simply gatherings of warriors. There were no formal legal institutions, and crimes, like murder, were dealt with by vengeance on the part of the family. The economic situation was not much better. With no currency, trade was reduced to bartering. The Greeks of this age didn't even have a word for merchant. Without efficient trade, every household had to be self-sufficient. It raised its own food, manufactured its own clothing, and produced its own tools. Skilled crafts were all but unheard of, though a lord might employ a swordsmith or a wheelwright. It was during this age that the central beliefs of Greek religion and myth began to form. This age gave rise to most of the myths of the classical era. However, organized religion as we know it today, with professional priests and places of worship, was all but unknown.